36. Welcome. This is a journey into sound. It is time.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Channel 36. Have you ever looked out the window at the state of affairs of the world, taken a look at the media, the things that are going on around us, and have ever just had the thought, man, the world just doesn't make sense to me anymore? Have you ever maybe also had the thought of looking back to younger years and thinking life just seemed to make more sense back in those days? I mean, it just made more sense to me. You know, I believe there's reasons for that. And what I want to talk about is just a couple of vantage points or windows that we can look through, I think, that help us to understand a little bit more the day and age that we live in as far as that goes. So we're going to be talking about that. I am kicking back in the studio here. Got a coffee. I've got Hardy Boys Nancy Drew here from 1977 playing in the background to keep me company. And so take a moment, get comfortable, and let's have a chat. Essentially, what I'm referring to or want to talk about is most I find would believe from a spiritual standpoint, a faith standpoint, that the Bible's pretty clear that we are in the end going to find ourselves at a mark where we have an antichrist in authority over the planet, and a one world government, one world monetary system, etc., etc. And I find that pretty much everyone's comfortable with that. However, very few seem to address, the process. How or recognize the reality that there's going to be a needed process to get there. It's not like we're going to snap our fingers and all of a sudden, boom, we're in this spot. Now, of course, the Bible does give us some hints at the climate of what the world's going to be going through. When some of those things, Matthew 24 alludes to some of that, obviously. But I believe that one of the main reasons that we have a lot of confusion is out there, or why things just don't make a lot of sense to the naked eye or just a basic common sense from the cultures that we have grown up in, is because we are right in the middle of that process to have that Antichrist come into place. But the process is a very concealed and covert one. So we see the effects of certain things, but we don't see really what's happening. So a lot just doesn't make any sense. We're not seeing the real factors that are causing these things. And all my intent is here is just to discuss, I think, a couple of points that, again, once we kind of process a bit, these things will absolutely, amongst other things, help us to understand a little bit more about where we are, which is, I believe, in the end times, very close to the return of Christ and so forth. The first thing being is, number one, coming to terms with the fact that there absolutely seems to be some level of governing authority, power, monetary influence, political power out there in our world above that of the governments that we see, above that of the level of influences of our presidents and prime ministers. It's pretty much undeniable now. Things are coming to the surface like crazy, and we can find footprints going all the way back in history pointing to this. And you know what? Call it whatever you may. You want to call them the Illuminati. You want to call them the Bilderbergers. You want to call them the New World Order, the Deep State, whatever name or tag you want to put on them. It does seem that there have been families that have had vast resources that have come together to essentially influence politics, our monetary systems, the wars, and so forth. Little indicators of that, and any of these things, my goodness, if I reference anything, go do your own research. See what you come up with by way of an explanation for these things. But, for example, I encourage you to take a look at or research the establishment of the U.S. Federal Reserve in the early 1900s. The U.S. Federal Reserve is a private company or corporation. It is not a government agency. And there you have a situation where you have private individuals with a massive monetary resource lending money to the U.S. government. Okay, so which is obviously has been the biggest global power for many, many years, or one of the most super influential ones in the many, many decades past. That being said, with money comes control and influence. So if you have a monetary source, it seems to make some sense that very likely they could have some influence over government and intelligence and military and those types of things. Fast forward a little bit, or there'd be lots of other examples, but fast forward a little bit to January of 61. President, this former Supreme Commander from World War II, Eisenhower, is President of the United States in January of 61, in his farewell address, and you can find this on YouTube, okay, talks about the potential and warning as he is giving his farewell, goodbye, a warning to the general public, to the U.S. population, of the absolute danger of the potential misplacement of abuse of power through the military-industrial complex, all right, or the misuse of power by something that he called the military-industrial complex. Okay, interesting. Within a couple of years of that, when Jack Kennedy comes into his presidential term, he's speaking about the abolishment of secret societies, how they should be repugnant to us. They should not be permitted, okay, to occur. There's a billion examples, but again, let's take just a quick moment to look at Bill Clinton. And when he was president, he was asked some questions in an interview and stated, well, just don't ask me that. I don't have an answer to that one. They don't tell me. About that. I mean, there's a government inside the government, man. I mean, so acknowledging that he is only at a certain level, and there's things he's not permitted or put, into the place of knowing, or he's not in a need to know basis. Now let's stop that for a second. Let's stop that. Here we have a president of arguably, again, one of the most powerful countries in modern history, without question, and he's not at a need to know basis. Well, who is they? Who is they that are doing that? So whatever name you want to give it, understanding that there seems to be this level that clearly, obviously, is being manipulated or being motivated strategically by the demonic kingdom, very likely by Lucifer himself or by Satan, to the establishment, to setting up the world the way that it needs to be for that Antichrist is a very real possibility. When you understand that, then you can understand why things are happening around us that just don't seem to make sense. A second category of things, and there are certainly more, but I just want to take the time to highlight a couple, is I believe the truth, as crazy as it might sound, of the coming appearance of hybrid human beings, that of hybrid and non-terrestrial beings again to walk the earth, as the giants did, for example, before the flood. And after the flood, as Joshua and Caleb and the boys had to deal with them again, and as Jesus said again in Matthew 24, as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be at the time of my return. Now, I'm not saying that these beings are going to be like the giants in 10, 12, 20 feet, 30 feet tall. But what I am saying is, again, through the whole demonic strategic strategy of manipulating human DNA, which is flown basically right from Genesis 3:15 right through to modern times, and the modern alien abduction, the alien movement, the alien abduction phenomenon and culture. We are seeing that. And so understanding that this is is about to occur, and on top of that, a complete alien disclosure, if you will, with governments coming forward and saying, yes, UFOs are real. There's a reason why we've had this phenomenon for many, many decades, forever, and so forth. And now, we want to talk about the fact they're here and we're working with them. And then we have the introduction of this ancient alien lie, being that they're our forefathers, our grandfathers. They gave birth to us, genetically modified us over the millions of years we've been on this planet. And that they're here now to save us. They're here to save us, and they're here to prevent us from destroying our world and all of these things. When you take it, even at least those two things, and start to look at world events, and again, looking at why things don't seem to make any sense, it starts to give you a bit of vantage point. And I believe these things are absolutely biblical, or certainly line up with some biblical truths that we have. In thinking about this, and I'll wrap up. There's a television show, a more modern TV show that I really enjoyed called 11/22/63, and actually shot in Canada, and Chris Cooper and James Franco, and essentially within that, Chris Cooper and his character discovers a rabbit hole or a time portal in the back of his diner, of all things, in a closet in his diner, and he and James Franco's character go back to 1960 and have an opportunity to stop the JFK assassination. And James Franco's character, basically, when he finally, at the very beginning of it, understands what's happening, is so flipped out by it, says, Al, it's Chris Cooper's character, Al, like, man, this just doesn't make any sense. Chris Cooper says to him, the world now doesn't make sense. And as soon as I heard that line from Chris Cooper, I'm like, man, that is so true. Guys, you have a great night, and we'll be, hope this is of some help to some folks out there. Obviously, many will know much, much more, but have a great night, and we'll talk to you soon.
is time.